Now, the question is, first it was being investigated by the Kolkata police, then by the CBI. There's been one person who's been arrested who is the sole accused as of now. That's what we believe. But the more moot question that needs to be asked of the CBI, of the agencies that are investigating this case, is that were there other elements who were involved in this? We had the audio phone call conversations which came out a few hours ago about how the authorities at the RG Kar Medical College, in the aftermath of this brutal rape and murder, in their communication with the family of the victim, were trying to first pass this off as some kind of an accident, and second, say that this was some kind of a suicide. The question is, why are these people not being questioned? Why are they not being arrested? And was there a concerted attempt by the institution, by the authorities, the management of RG Kar Hospital to try and hush up this case? If there was, then they need to be held accountable. But first, the story of what has been going through over the last 20 days since this very, very grim and unfortunate case came to light.
নেক্সট উইকে অ্যাসেম্বলি কল করব বিধানসভা স্পিকারকে বলে, এবং আমরা ওয়েস্ট বেঙ্গল অ্যাসেম্বলি থেকে আগামী 10 দিনের মধ্যে ফাঁসির ধর্ষকের ফাঁসি চাই এই বিল আমরা পাশ করে রাজ্যপালের কাছে পাঠাবো।
ममता बनर्जी जी, आपकी ममता कहाँ चली गई है? जिस प्रकार से निर्ममता का परिचय आप दे रही हैं, लगातार पीड़िता के माता पिता और खासकर माताजी का जो बयान आया है, ये बड़ा दुख देता है।
जिस तरीके से एक महिला के साथ जितना निंदनीय, उस घटना की जितनी निंदा की जाए उतना कम है। और आप क्या कर रही हैं बदले में? आप दोषारोपण कर रही हैं, आप दूसरे राज्यों में देख रही हैं। अपने राज्य को आप संभालिए मुख्यमंत्री ममता बनर्जी जी।
যেটা আগামী দিনে গোটা দেশব্যাপী একটা পজিটিভ চেঞ্জ আনতে পারতো, সেটাকে হাইজ্যাক করে নোংরামিতে, নোংরা রাজনীতিতে নামিয়ে এনে।
All right, let's open this up to our guests who are joining us on the full panel tonight. On brass tack, Shotrupa is a spokesperson of the Bengal BJP. Dr. Riju Datta is national spokesperson of the Trinamool Congress. Nazrul Islam is former ADGP of the West Bengal Police, and Shikha Mukherjee, senior journalist, is also joining us. Dr. Riju Datta, let me start with you first. Yeah. The fact is that if anybody needed some proof that the hospital authorities in the initial hours after this tragic rape and murder were trying to completely obfuscate the truth, completely cover up the truth, you look at those two phone calls by the two assistant superintendents. First, the person says, "Oh, your daughter is under threat, please come and rescue her." The second person says, "Oh, she could have committed suicide, please come and collect her body." It is very apparent that the college authorities were trying to hush this whole thing up. And I don't know why, but it's been 20 days, but the Kolkata police and subsequently the CBI have not been able to book the college authorities for what is apparent dereliction of duty.
You have answered the question yourself. That was the answer I was about to give you. That if a lady has called the parents of the victims and misled them, and I'm saying misled them, given them misinformation, it is criminal. That lady has a phone number which was displaying on the victim's father's phone. That lady can be tracked. Last 12 days, Zaka, 12 days, the principal, the medical superintendent of vice principal, the dean of students, the HOD chest medicine, HOD forensic medicine have been grilled by the CBI. Their homes raided by the CBI. Please tell me, when all these people if I even agree with you hypothetically that the hospital authorities try to distort information, try to give a cocky story or a nonsensical story to the victim's family, they are all at the disposal and the behest of the CBI. What has CBI done from 13th of August till today, 30th of August? 17 good days where you are grilling the principal every day for 12 hours. It looks like CBI has given him a job. He's going on a shift in the morning, he's coming back at home, and sometimes they're raiding his house like work from home. What kind of nonsensical circus is going on with the CBI? I have no clue. But Zaka, I want to make a bigger and important point here. If you allow me 30 seconds. That is, after the Nirbhaya case happened, there were several voices in the parliament like Venkaiah Naidu, Jaya Bachchan ji, Renuka Chaudhary ji, B. Raja and the late Sushma Swaraj ji, who wanted strict, stringent laws. Because rapes are happening in Bengal, rapes are happening in Uttar Pradesh, Karnataka, Kerala, Gujarat, everywhere. Nothing has changed in the past, God knows, 20 years. Nothing has changed. So my chief minister has wrote a letter to the prime minister. And she has said in the assembly, we will pass a law where we will say that capital punishment for rapists. My leader Abhishek Banerjee said, I will bring a private member bill in the winter session where I will say time-bound, specific time frame manner, rapists should be hanged by gallows. Where are we wrong? Are we demanding this for the daughters of Bengal or are we demanding it for the daughters of this country? But unfortunately, rape tourism and vulture politics is the need of the hour for the opposition parties in Bengal. All they want is Mamata Banerjee resign. Nobody is bothered about justice for this daughter. Nobody is bothered about giving the capital punishment to the culprits.
Let me ask Shatrupal of the BJP. Fact is, the CBI took over this case on the 13th of August this month. It's been 17 days since the CBI has been investigating. Why are they not able to arrest Sandeep Ghosh? He's been questioned for 12 hours a day for the last 10 days. Why are they not able to arrest the assistant superintendents who made that phone call to the victim's family and said, first phone call, that look, her condition is precarious, please come and save her. Second phone call says, oh, she could have committed suicide. Why is the CBI shy of arresting these individuals? Shatrupal.
Saka, regarding the CBIs, I'm sure you understand that I am not the spokesperson of the CBI, but from the BJP, we are incredibly concerned as to exactly what is happening. But at least what we can see, what the police should have done in the first 4 days, I have been maintaining my three straight questions. One is they did not secure the site of the crime. You can see from the video, which is now being circulated. One, they did not question anybody who was on duty, leave alone Sandeep Ghosh. And thirdly, the details of almost everything is out. I mean, the postmortem was done there. There was a tremendous hurry-burry to cremate the girl. So all this, there was absolutely no attempt to track the case, so to say. But at least as far as CBI is concerned, what we can see on television, they're moving around, they're trying to collect forensic evidence. They've even gone to this Sanjay Roy's residence. They've, at least on the media, we've understood that they are doing various kinds of tests, like the lie detector test, some tower dump test. I thought that I understand much of all this. But CBI is doing its bit, and since it is a court-monitored inquiry, I believe they have given a sealed envelope in the Supreme Court, wherein I think CBI representative also said that, my lord, we've been given the inquiry on the 5th day, and that very night, the entire evidence was, done away with that rampage in Arjikot. Having said that, let me come back to the other. May I?
Yeah.
The other part of what Richu said, typically insensitive of Trinamool, one can still use the words like rape tourism. I vehemently object as a woman. But Mamata Banerjee can keep on raving and ranting from the stage and giving her special slogans, even writing to the Prime Minister, which, by the way, has been adequately answered by the Minister of Women and Children Welfare. But she is now going and passing a law and wants to pass a law in the assembly.
I want to describe to our viewers the images that we are showing on the right-hand side of the screen. The Kolkata police has released these images just a few hours ago. There are various senior officers. There is the Commissioner of Police, there is the additional CP, there is OC, WC cell, lady officer from the Tala police station, FSL staff, all of them who are trying to protect the crime scene. Now, I want to ask Nazrul Islam, who is a former ADG of police. Now, the biggest sort of contention against the Kolkata police has been that when those, hooligans came and tried to disturb the seminar hall and surrounding proceedings there, the contention against them has been that they were not interested in protecting the crime scene at all. But now with these images which have been put out by the Kolkata police of the ADG, of the Commissioner of Police, other senior police officials trying to sort of wound a kind of blanket of security around there, do you believe that the crime scene is protected in a way that we can actually find out who caused this very, very debilitative rape and murder of the victim?
No. Actually, if the crime scene is the seminar hall,
yes,
then only one gate was open. So if the criminals come to her, then it should be come through the gate, and if he goes out, if or they, it will be through the gate. So if the crime scene should be protected, the entire seminar hall should have been protected. They have not done it. And you can see the number of people who were not supposed to be there. And you have already described it, that the incident took place at about 4 early in the morning.
yeah,
And if it is taken as true that the college authority came to know about it at 9:30, then the assistant super first making the call and telling the parents that their daughter is ill, unconscious. When the parents rang back, the same person told that she has been taken to emergency. And after some time, the same assistant super informed that their daughter had committed suicide. Arjikor is a medical college and hospital. There is no dearth of doctors. So
Okay.
the doctors could not understand whether it is unconscious body or a dead body.
yeah,
So she was dead at 4. So giving the information that she is ill, she has been taken to emergency and she has committed suicide is only to cover up the crime of rape and murder. And in keeping with this, not only the parents, the police station also, they have informed that unconscious body.
Okay, let me ask
They
Shikha
could not
Mukherjee,
find
if
out
that is
that
the
the
case,
body
as
was
Nazrul
dead.
Islam says, that this was a case of a suspicious death of an individual concerned, why were the police then trying to say, oh, please come and collect her, she is sort of trying to survive against whatever happened to her? The second phone call that happened said she could have committed suicide. Isn't it apparent to you, Shikha Mukherjee, the hospital authorities were trying to cover this whole thing up in the first place? And as a consequence of that, so was the police, the state police, and so was the state administration.
Well, certainly there's something very, 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 very dubious about the entire process of informing the people, filing an FIR, and this whole business of when was the FIR filed. Apparently, it was filed very late.
Yes.
Therefore, there are. I'm so sorry. There was plenty of gaps. But having said that, this is a question that is even more puzzling for me. There is one arrest which was made about the 12th or 13th of August. And since then, we have no information. Kolkata police today releases some information, some visual. But where is the rest of the information? Why was this woman killed? Why was this young girl killed? How did this guy who walked in there, I mean, Mr. Nazrul Islam is here. This is a question to which I have never received an answer, which is, how did this guy even know that she was there in that room in his sleep? So somewhere along the line, there are loads of questions of the means and the motive of this murder.
Okay.
The second thing is that when the doctors, young doctors who are on protest and have been on protest since day one, are saying that it is our concern, we want justice for this girl. We also want assurances that this particular murder will not be replicated if we return to work. They're worried.
Okay.
In other words, they themselves are raising a question about why did this girl die? And they are worried about the reasons for her death.
No, but are you not worried that the first phone calls made by the college management seem to suggest that they were trying to hush up this whole case? That's the moot point. Why were they doing that?
I don't think that is the moot point. The moot point is that if there was a hush up, why was there a hush up? Why was this particular girl targeted? You answer that basic question, the rest of it all comes out.
No, I think the fundamental point is that this doctor and her case was hushed up, or at least being tried to hush up, by the college management, whether it was the assistant superintendents or whether they were instructed by the management of the hospital. It is clear to me as daylight, Dr. Riju Datta, that somebody was trying to hush this whole case up. What was their motive? And why are those people not under arrest already? Who says, you're a doctor, who says, please come to be with your daughter, she's fighting for her life, in the first phone call that the college authorities have made to the victim's family? Who says that?
Zaka, my humble submission to you is, none of the people on this panel, including you or the viewers of your channel, are privy to the status report of the CBI, which is supposed to be placed in front of the Chief Justice on 5th of September. Point number one. Point number two, the answer to your question is that all these hospital administrators, from the principal to this assistant super who made these calls, to even the security guards, are polygraphed, are grilled, are asked multiple times to come to CBI for interrogation. Why has CBI not arrested them if they're guilty? Why your frustration, you're shouting out of frustration, I am also shouting out of frustration. Why? If somebody has misled the victim's parents, first of all, you have to also understand that this audio leak is a major lapse from the CBI. After the audio leak has come out into the foray, there is a woman who's identifying herself as the assistant super, misleading, giving misinformation to the victim's family. She is at the disposal of the CBI. What is CBI doing? That is what the Calcutta police has done multiple press conferences. When will CBI do a press conference and say that this is what we have done in the last 17 odd days?
Let Shatrubha answer that. Shatrubha, I mean, the question that's being asked is, why are these two assistant superintendents, clearly they were trying to mislead the probe, clearly they were trying to mislead the family of the victim, why have they not been arrested despite multiple rounds of questioning? That's the question from Dr. Riju Datta. Shatrubha.
Zaka, Riju can keep shouting whatever he wants to, but again I'm going to say CBI is being monitored by none other than Supreme Court of India, and I'm sure CBI will give their necessary report whenever. But the question here is, again, I want to push it back to the police. This call happened, look at the insensitivity of the voice. Obviously, like Shikha is saying, that there is a clear attempt to cover up. First they call up and say, oh, please come, maybe your daughter's ill, and then they say that something has happened to the daughter. Then they say that suicide, and then the person in question, Shunning Ghosh, he has been completely insensitive in the whole thing from the morning, saying that what was she doing there in the night? Why was she on night duty? Mind you, Zaka, he is the super. He should be knowing the roster. He should be knowing that the girl was there, and he possibly also knew. Why possibly? He knew very clearly. Did you please behave yourself? I didn't talk in your time. Shunning Ghosh has very, very clear. Zaka, please stop him. I can't hear myself.
Riju, one second.
Basic Sherlock Holmes cannot
Riju, please.
The way the West Bengal government has gone all out to protect this one man, that also is a big question in the eyes of West Bengal people. Zaka, right now, it has gone beyond BJP, CPM, Trinamool, Congress, anybody. People are now asking, why? What were the police doing? Here you have a police commissioner who comes on to or in front of media on the night of the rampage at Arlington and throws up his hands and says, I'm sorry, I don't have resources. So the police minister for the last 13 consecutive years did not think it necessary to equip the police commissioner with adequate resources.
So let me ask Nazrul Islam, former ADGP of the police there in West Bengal, that it's very, very clear, sir, that all of these protests, whether they are politically motivated, whether they are trying to prove a point, score a political point as it were, it's very clear that fundamentally the victim at Arlington, the lack of protection that she was given, and most importantly, after this whole thing came to light, the manner in which the authorities, the college authorities, tried to suppress this whole case, it's very evident that they need to be held to account, whether it is the principal, whether it's the assistant superintendent or whoever it was. Now, the problem is, Nazrul Islam, neither the Kolkata police who were first investigating this, nor the CBI now seem to be wanting to call any of these people for interrogation and arrest them, when it's apparent that there was an attempt to try and hush this whole thing up.
In my opinion, the Kolkata police tried to destroy the evidence and cover up the crime of rape and murder. CBI, I have not seen anything that they are doing so. But you have to remember that CBI is not investigating the case from the beginning. Much damage was done to the case. A 13 order was there. Actually from 14 CBI is investigating. And in a case like this, when there is no eyewitness, the forensic evidence only can
Mr. Nazrul Islam,
identify
you will be taken to court for saying this. You will be taken
No,
to
one
court
second,
for saying
Dr.
this.
Datta. No, one second. Let him say what he has to say. Whether he gets taken to court or not, that's not your remit or my remit. He is a free individual. He is allowed to say what he wants to say. No, sorry. Let him continue saying. Yes, Mr. Islam, continue, please.
I am saying the case was started, police was informed at 10:10. The inquest was done as 16:20. And it was done not on a criminal case, but on an UD case.
Okay.
And there it was noted that there are several injuries, 10, 11 at least mentioned clearly.
Yes.
And there was oozing of blood from the private parts and from mouth and other parts.
Okay.
After seeing this body, every police officer has got the training I got. And in Kolkata police I worked for 7 years as DC DD, also as DC headquarters.
Okay.
So from my experience, there cannot be any doubt that any police officer will understand this is a case of murder and rape, not an UD case.
Okay. I got to
Where
wrap up
the
at that. I'm completely out of
postmortem-
time. Thank you very much, Nazrul Islam, Mr. Dr. Riju Datta, Shatrupa, and Ms. Mukherjee for joining us. Like I said, the most important thing is that all of us want justice for the victim who was brutally raped and murdered. Unfortunately, the politics between the CBI on the one side, the state police on the other side, and of course the monitoring of the High Court, that leaves a lot to be desired, and we really, really hope that the victim in this case finally finds justice. I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back on the other side, I sit down with Thiruvananthapuram Member of Parliament, Senior Congress Leader Dr. Shashi Tharoor. He's come out with a new book about words, but I also ask him about this raging controversy that's going on in the Malayalam film industry, where one by one, big name actors, directors, producers are all being felled for what is very, very reputative behavior against women. I talk about that and a lot more on the other side of this exclusive interview with Dr. Shashi Tharoor.
That Army national cemeteries will not be used in partisan or political activities. Did the Trump campaign break the law by filming an ad there?
Look, for anything regarding any campaign ads, I would direct you to the campaign to speak to that, to the Trump campaign. What I can tell you is that, and I think the Army recently put out a statement earlier today that kind of went through what exactly happened in the incident. You can go on Arlington National Cemetery's website. It's very clear, the rules and regulations. What I'll say about the mission of those that work at Arlington National Cemetery, these are people who are dedicated to honoring our fallen heroes. And they maintain that hallowed ground. They work with the families in honoring those who have had their loved one lost. I'm just not going to go beyond what the Army has said, other than that, there was a report that was filed, but subsequently that person decided not to press charges, and so we're just going to, we stand by the Army statement that this matter is closed.
If the Army doesn't further pursue this with either civil penalties or whatever can be done, what's to stop the next person from filming a political ad there?
Well, what I would say is the rules are very, very clear. They're also online and available on the Arlington National Cemetery website. That is really a decision that the Army has to make. That's not one that the department is making. That's for the Army to make. The Army considers this matter closed. The department stands behind the Army on that. My understanding is that the families had invited, a few guests to attend a ceremony earlier this week. And there was some type of incident that happened between an employee at the ANC and a member that was traveling with another group's party. For more details on that, I'd refer you to the Army to speak to that. From my understanding and from what the Army said is that an ANC employee who attempted to ensure adherence to the rules of the ANC was pushed aside. The employee acted with professionalism and decorum, but there was a bit of an incident that did happen. What we want to focus on is the fact that the people that work at the Arlington National Cemetery every single day do so with dignity, work to preserve the memories of those who have made the ultimate sacrifice, and ultimately work with the families who visit Arlington National Cemetery. And, there are nearly, I think it's like 3,000 public ceremonies that are conducted at Arlington National Cemetery every single year without incident. The rules and regulations are very, very clear. What happened earlier this week is very unfortunate. It's really the decision for the Army to make on to pursue any other path forward. The department right now is not doing that, and the Army, we stand behind the Army in considering this matter closed.
All right, so here we are for this special interview here on CNN News 18. The author of this wonderful new book, it's called A Wonderland of Words, inspired, of course, the Wonderland being from Alice in Wonderland. But it's about words and how words can be strung together to form beautiful sentences, and sentences become ideas. The author of the book, Dr. Shashi Tharoor, is now joining us. Thank you very much, and congratulations. I couldn't think of a better author than Dr. Shashi Tharoor for A Wonderland of Words. But tell me this, I mean, are you not, you have this whole caricature about, the man who beats the dictionary and so on. What was the idea behind this book?
Well, you're right. When the idea of a book came up, I was hesitant for a little while because I thought, do I really want to be, adding to this existing caricature of me as kind of some etymological egghead, this inflated vocabulary I've got, or rather inflated reputation for my vocabulary, which I honestly think has become more an object of memes and jokes and parodies than of any real serious appreciation. And the problem with that is it often obscures the fact that I believe words matter because they actually encapsulate ideas. That an idea, a thought is inchoate in your head until you find the words to express it to others. That's why words matter in politics and what you believe and how you can communicate it effectively. So for me, I thought, I've been using words in 25 books, 24, and another one was also about words.
So this is your 26th book?
This is my 26th, and there has been one sort of much simpler book on words called Tharoorosaurus, which is about individual words, their definitions and usage, which was really a lighter of effort. This is a little more serious in that it talks about words in greater depth. And it also covers a wider range: word usage, word history, word origins, and of course trends in the evolution of the language, including a chapter on Indian English, a chapter on other languages that have infused their words into the English language, and so on. So it's a little more serious, but it's meant to be a casual read. It's not a book for scholars. I didn't intend there to be any footnotes, and my publishers, with their tireless efforts, have actually got notes at the end. But by and large, it's not a book for scholars. It's a book for people who either love language or want to know more about words or are still learning.
You do mention in this book about your father and how he was this inspiration for you to sort of develop a love for language and love for words, and how you used to play Scrabble with him. And if you were around now, this whole thing about Wordle in the New York Times and how that would be a big thing in your family. Why is it that in this day and age, families are not as sort of enamored by words, and this whole thing about Scrabble or Wordle is not taking over in the way that it would have in the 60s and 70s and so on?
Well, partially because there are so many other distractions, right? I mean, for example, when I was a kid and I had asthma, so I couldn't go out and play with my friends, and I was confined to bed and I couldn't even sleep because I was struggling to breathe. These are the days before, nebulizers and inhalers and so on. So what did I do? There was no TV, there was no Nintendo, PlayStation, no mobile phones, no laptops. The only thing I had was books. And so books became my entertainment, my escape, and my education. And in that process, by just delving into books, that's how I acquired words, and that's how the words became my friends and companions for the rest of my life. Because you read something extensively enough, you come across the same word in 3 different places, you'll figure out the meaning and the usage and even the nuance of that usage pretty easily. When my father came back from England in 1959, where he'd discovered and become a Scrabble fanatic, he had to go out and create a little group of friends in Bombay to play Scrabble. There was a couple of other people who had also returned from England earlier, and he got them in, and then they created a group to meet every Sunday and play Scrabble. But it wasn't as if it was a widespread practice. Of course, it's become more so now over the years. And that's, I think, the same thing. Wordle, my father invented a game very much like Wordle. We played on car journeys, where he would imagine a word, and then we would have to guess that word. But he wouldn't, obviously there's no computer, no gray squares and green squares and yellow squares. He would just tell us how many letters we got right, and then we'd have to figure it out. But it was fun. We got more turns than Wordle gives you, but it was something which, shared his delight in words for themselves. He would set us puzzles, like he would give us a long word and ask us to make shorter words out of them. And whichever of us got the most number of words, it was usually me because I was the eldest, My sisters were younger, and they were allowed to have also 3-letter words. I had to do 4-letter words and more. But I still, had a lot of pleasure doing this kind of thing and realizing how letters and words can be used and creatively rearranged.
My favorite Indian English word is Mulligatawny, which is
Mulligatawny, actually,
Mulligatawny, which is another word for rasam.
But they make it as a slightly different soup. The recipe is somewhat different from rasam.
Yeah.
But it's now a British soup called mulligatawny. And many people assume it's Irish because of the name Mulligan, So silly.
What I do want to know from you is, you are a politician. Are you not afraid of this whole, caricature of here's this guy who, if there's no dictionary, turn to Shashi Tharoor kind of thing? Because that's not the image you want as a politician.
So first of all, I address this in the introductory essay, where I talk about the fact that that's precisely not the image that I want. But when you're being relentlessly caricatured, and obviously there's some people doing it affectionately, some people doing it maliciously, some people doing it stupidly. But when you're there anyway, you've only two choices. One is you either, sulk or turn surly, or you reject it altogether. And the other is you actually embrace it and make the best of what it represents, and sometimes make a joke of it.
But does it not worry you when you use phrases like cattle class, or when you use phrases like Farrago? People are looking at you as this elitist, cut off from, the real world kind of thing. Does that not worry you?
Well, cattle class was a disaster, largely because I was asked the question by a BJP-inclined journalist on Twitter. Mr. Minister, this is when the austerity drive was proclaimed by the Congress government, Mr. Minister, will you travel cattle class? And I thought that just as he was using the phrase, it's a phrase everyone knows the meaning of, because I had spent the preceding 29, 30 years in America, where the word was very commonly used, not to demean the passengers, but to demean the airlines for herding us all in like cattle. So I said, yes, I'll travel in cattle class out of solidarity with all our holy cows, which was a typical kind of Stephanian Delhi University kind of pun. I didn't take it seriously. I then traveled off on a very long flight to Liberia, no internet on planes in those days, and it was almost 24 hours later that I had landed in Monrovia, and heard that the dung had hit the fan, as it were. So this is a challenge, because obviously you're in a multilingual polity. People are going to translate these expressions literally because they don't understand the usage of them. Meant that I had to be 10 times more careful than perhaps others felt the need to be, because people were looking out for things I was saying in order to make nasty stories out of them. And so I stopped using words like interlocutor and cattle class, and stopped trying even to be very funny very often, because humor doesn't always translate very well in a multilingual polity. So yeah, I mean, I've fallen into a few traps, Zaka, you're right. But I think I'll challenge you to find a word being politically misused, or a word being misused in a way that's done me political damage in the last 7, 8 years at least, if not 10.
Okay. Let me now come to some...
In other words, I've learned my lesson.
Fair enough. Let me come to some contemporary issues. And I want to talk about an issue that's sort of raging through your home state, the film industry in your home state, about this whole Me Too wave. Do you see this as sort of a seminal moment in that industry, in that society, in a way that women artists are saying, no more, we want to live by a different set of rules, and therefore the male artists have to sort of learn to live with this new set of rules?
And not just the artists, the male producers, male directors, male people who actually, call the shots on a set. They have certain responsibilities, and that's what this is very clearly established. Well, in some ways, we've been hearing rumors to this effect, from the casting couch to various practices in various film industries around the world, and certainly across India. But at least one can say that it's the women of Kerala who had the courage to demand an inquiry. I'm actually slightly disappointed very disappointed by the state government sitting on the report which was submitted to them in 2019 by the all-women committee that wrote the report, the Justice Hema and 2 other senior women who had studied this and who had done a very thorough job. And when they did release it, they redacted 69 names to protect identities, which means the identities of both the accuser and the accused. But that's really something which I'm glad that I gather a court has taken note of and directed the police to fire suo motu FIRs where there is a report of a cognizable offence. I mean, I was shocked when a minister tried to excuse this by saying, well, the women didn't complain to the government. I'm sorry, they complained to a committee appointed by the government. And therefore, that committee should have been taken seriously. And I'm sorry that 5 years were lost in the process. The state government did not do the right thing.
How do you speak to the fears that, look, this whole thing, the news cycle is on this story now, people are talking about this story, the channels are covering the story, but in 15 days' time or a month's time, they will move on to something else, and then it'll be back to business as usual. How do you speak to those fears?
I do worry about that because, let's face it, Nirbhaya happened in 2012. Eventually, despite the outrage, the candlelight protests, the dharnas, everything else, what happened? Yes, a law was passed. Has it been properly implemented? And what kind of deterrent effect did it have? And all the subsequent rapes and assaults that we've seen, culminating now in another expression of societal outrage in Kolkata. I mean, the fact is we are in a situation now where we have to do some much more fundamental root and branch inquiry into ourselves as a society, into the practices. I have been urging for some time now, even going back to when I was a minister in the government, that we need to bring in gender sensitivity training for our boys at a very young age. Start them when they're 6 years old and telling them to understand the importance of respecting women. Try and make sure that at every stage we have institutional arrangements that protect women's interests. So whether it's in a film set, having separate toilets for women, which don't exist apparently, right down to in a hospital having women's rest areas so that this rogue could not have come in and attacked this lady because she was resting in a seminar room. There was no other place at the end of a 36-hour shift for her to lie down. I mean, you have to create common sense institutional arrangements to protect women in the kinds of situations which they have every right to be in. I mean, we have to stop this patriarchal nonsense of why was she there at this hour or why was she on that street. Of course, we need to have better conditions on the streets. We need to have better street lighting everywhere in India. We need to have better police patrolling. We need to put more resources into all of this because our women have the right to pursue their lives and their dreams while feeling safe. This is a basic human right and we should certainly fight for it.
I'll come to that Kolkata example in just 1 second, but my final question on what's been happening with this Malayalam film industry. One of the persons who's been accused of these grave sexual assaults is an actor named Mukesh. He's also a public representative. He's an MLA. And there's a lot of pressure saying he should step down as a public representative because he will impede a free and fair investigation. Where do you stand on that?
Well, look, I think those who had positions in AMMA, the Association of the Malayalam Film Industry, and who were implicated definitely had to resign, and they have done so. The secretary was named in a couple of the charges. But also, I think others who may not have been named or blamed have to take moral responsibility because they presided over an iniquitous system. That's one thing. When an individual who did not have a position of authority in the system has been charged, he has every right to defend himself if he doesn't admit the truth and face an inquiry or a court case or whatever. So I think there is, I mean, I understand many in my own party have also called for his resignation, and there is, a public thing there. But if he claims that he is innocent and that a court trial will prove him innocent, he probably, has the right to stand up and try and clear his name. But the process should start, and of course people should, and the police and others should look into the details of this. We've gone past the days when, women who had the courage to come up with allegations were just dismissed as, oh, he said, she's saying one thing, he said anything else, what's the proof? Because there is a context, and the context in this report is a pervasive atmosphere of abuse. And if an individual, for example, has had complaints given to the committee about repeated instances of behavior by several different victims, then I think you are looking at a different pattern. You can't just discount everything as hearsay.
I do want to talk about Kolkata and the unfortunate thing that happened with the young doctor there.
Not unfortunate, tragic, criminal.
Very, very tragic. Of course, criminal. The BJP is saying the reason why the India Alliance, the Congress Party and all partners of the India Alliance are not sort of vehemently talking about this is because it's happened in an opposition-ruled state. Had it happened in Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh or any of the BJP-ruled states, the India Alliance would have been all over that story. How do you sort of speak to those allegations?
Yeah, unfortunately, the politicization of all these issues is a real problem. I mean, why is the CPM defending a particular MLA? If what he did is true, it's reprehensible. Similarly, why is the BJP silent on every... I mean, you sadly open any day's newspaper, Zaka, there are assaults, rapes and violence that may not have ignited the public imagination the way the tragedy of this doctor did, but which are happening in BJP-ruled states as well. And the BJP is silent on those. So sadly, there is a tendency to always either defend yourself politically or attack the other side politically. That's the nature of our politics. But you all in the media have to speak in the larger public interest. Your accountability is to society, not to any government, whether central or state. Your accountability is to the people of this country who deserve to live in a better India.
I do want to ask you, because we spoke about Kolkata and it's been in the news in the last four weeks or so, what's happened in Bangladesh? And because you're a scholar of foreign policy, the fact that a leader who was there for 15 years suddenly in the space of a few days is ousted, there's a students' protest, she's now seeking asylum, she's here in India. Are you worried about, the Hindus getting killed in Bangladesh and whether or not the Indian government and the Indian state will have some kind of leverage there in Bangladesh? How do you see what's been playing out there?
It's all those issues, and there's more in this very complex situation that's arisen. I don't know which one to take first. Certainly there's no question that there were assaults on minorities, and particularly the Hindu minority. We've had the ISKCON temple trashed, we've had Hindu individuals being attacked, and we've had Indian institutions, because of the identification with India, including the Indira Gandhi Cultural Center, completely destroyed, and the famous statue of the Pakistani army surrendering to the Indian generals in 71, also destroyed. So there's been a strongly anti-Indian and anti-Hindu undercurrent in some of the early days of the anarchy that accompanied the departure of Sheikh Hasina. But there have also been stories which we don't report enough of Bangladeshi Muslims protecting Hindu families, Hindu installations, Hindu temples. And there's also been the reassuring, the assurances of Muhammad Yunus, the head of the interim government, who has twice met with Hindu minority leaders, who has gone to the Dhakeshwari temple to show his solidarity and sympathy, very much the way in which Sardar Patel went to the Nizamuddin Dargah back in 1947. It's a way of showing that you belong here. The government is not going to be hostile to you. Yes, there will be some incidents continuing, but I get the impression from Bangladesh that the situation is much better than has been conveyed in the Indian media, because perhaps our people are naturally quite inflamed about some of the things that have happened, but it's perhaps been disproportionately portrayed negatively in terms of the Hindus, and that the situation is calming down, the police are reasserting control, and that the number of incidents involving Hindus is first of all, is negligible today, but it was never as bad as portrayed earlier. That's the thing. Now, I have gone through the entire gamut, first saying there's some anarchy every time there's a popular revolution, let's not worry about it, to then expressing my own rage and frustration and unhappiness about what I was hearing about what was happening to Muslims and Indian institutions, and then getting a pushback and a feedback from many voices in Bangladesh, telling me, not just on social media, but even messaging me or calling me, to tell me that things are not as bad as my last set of remarks implied, and I have now come to a midpoint on this. So that's on the first issue you raised. On the question of Sheikh Hasina coming to India, I think we absolutely had to do that. We had no choice to begin with, number one, because she has been a loyal friend of India and taken great risks for India. You remember, before her, we had militants from northeastern states conducting attacks in India and then seeking refuge in Bangladesh with the connivance of the authorities. We had the ISI running rampant. We had some extremist Islamist fundamentalist groups that were acting against our interests. When Hasina came to power, she cracked down on them. She even handed over some of these militants to us who are now in our custody. If you don't show gratitude for this kind of support, why will anyone help you in future? So India had absolutely the obligation to show that if a friend is in need, we are there for that friend. That is something that matters to us as human beings. It should matter to us as governments. So on that, I have no problem. Yes, it would complicate matters a little bit if she stayed indefinitely, because obviously Bangladesh would see us as harboring somebody who is hostile to them. But it all depends on how Hasina conducts herself, because we know that, for example, the Dalai Lama has been a refugee in India for 55 years. And in those 55 years, we've said to him, you're a spiritual leader, we welcome you here, but you can't conduct political activity. Now, the Chinese may have a different view on all this, but I believe India has, by and large, stuck to that. We revere the Dalai Lama, but we're not encouraging him to make statements of a purely political nature against the Chinese. So we could say to Sheikh Hasina, you're welcome in our country, but please don't make statements against the Bangladeshi government, because that puts us in an awkward position. For that reason, she may herself want to move on. But if she does want to move on, that's really her choice. You can't call a guest to your house and say, how soon are you going? I mean, that simply doesn't work, and I think we have to show her that much of respect. She deserves it, and we owe it to her.
All right. My last couple of questions. We've had these sequence of events in the last few weeks. You had the Prime Minister going to Ukraine. A few weeks before that, he went to Russia. In the last week, he's had phone calls with the President of the United States, the President of Russia. Do you see India playing some kind of meaningful role to mediate peace between Russia and Ukraine?
I think President Zelensky's remarks after Mr. Modi left, the press conference he held, certainly do not give much rise for any sort of mediatory role there, because he did not give any signal that such a thing would be welcomed. He basically said, if India wants to convey our message to the Russians that they better, give us this, that, and the other, then it'll work. But obviously, that's not a basis for negotiation. In my UN days, we learned very hard, the hard way, that peace can only come about when there is when the situation is ripe for it. By which I mean the parties have to be ready to see peace as being more in their advantage than a continuation of war. It is by no means certain that in either Ukraine or Russia, there is a level of either exhaustion or other rational conclusion that they need to stop. I think both sides believe that they can continue to change the picture on the battlefield. The Ukrainians feel they can take some Russian territory, so they have some bargaining power. The Russians feel they can continue their advance into eastern Ukraine, and they're both continuing. So, I mean, I don't really see that. However, the fact that India is uniquely a country that has access to both sides should enable it to relay effective messages. Where some other countries have done well that we could have considered playing a role in, which we have not done, is, for example, the UAE organizing this very interesting prisoner exchange between the two countries. Now, that's a tangible, practical benefit, and that gives the UAE not only a very useful role in terms of human lives, but also the stature to continue building on that for something else. And we haven't done anything like that, so I don't think we can, claim any authority. I think it's right that Mr. Modi went, particularly because his visit to Moscow and his hug of President Putin coincided with that horrible attack on the children's hospital. And therefore he needed to go to Ukraine, it seems to me, to remedy that particular image, and a hug of Mr. Zelensky amongst the rubble, plus the visit to the Children's Museum, with the memorial to children killed in the war. All that was the right thing to do. But now, presumably, both sides are equally unhappy or equally happy with him. I think he should just not, presume anything more given what's going on. The same thing applies in Gaza, Palestine. We have relations with both countries. We are among the handful of countries with an ambassador to the Palestinian Authority. But it's very clear that Israel is not at all inclined to stop at the moment. Others have been attempting various, diplomatic efforts to bring the war to the end, and at the same to an end, and also to get the hostages released. I think until we are required, we should just wait and watch.
One final word. What is your reading of the state of the U.S. presidential race? Which of these two candidates would be better for India as you see it?
Well, look, I think India will probably do okay with either side, in that we didn't do badly with either Obama or Biden, and we didn't do badly with Trump. So from India's point of view, I'm not sure that we have a whole lot to worry about, whatever the outcome is, because India-US relations has reached a level of bipartisan support in America that I think is reassuring. Having said that, there are very different styles involved. In the case of Mr. Trump, he's very explicitly transactional. Everything he does is a businessman's mentality, what's in it for me? So you can be sure that whatever he comes to India for, he'll expect India to give him something. And Mr. Modi's given him a lot in the past, including the grand reception in Ahmedabad and all that. At some point, other demands may come if he were to win. In the case of Kamala Harris, there's the inestimable advantage of somebody who is half Indian herself and has intimate awareness from her childhood of Indian society, culture, cuisine, habits, and so on, and who has relatives in this country. So that instinctively would predispose her towards us, and she has very strong backing from large numbers of Indian groups. But at the same time, she is not likely to show much sympathy for some of the policies of the present government when it comes to, shall we say, intolerance of opposition or human rights issues or whatever, because even in the American political space, she's tended to identify with those sections of the Indian American community who have been critical of Mr. Modi, people like Pramila Jayapal, the congresswoman, and others. So there are Indian American political leaders who are happy with whoever is ruling in India and will always be friendly. And there are others who want India to be India and flourish and succeed, but they want it to be more liberal democratic, more human rights oriented, more open, and they will be critical of tendencies in the other direction. So you take your pick. My pick is pretty clear, but this is not the place to talk about.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Tharoor, and congratulations once again on this wonderful new book. Wonderland, I presume, is from Alice in Wonderland, right? Wonderland of words around the world in 101 essays. Thank you very much for tuning in to this special broadcast.
Presented by
Ready! Hey! Hands on your orders! Right! Shoulder!